The last signal. The crystalline spires of Ethros burned against the alien sky. Commander Zara Thane pressed her scaled palm against the observation deck's transparent wall, watching as another defense platform exploded in brilliant orange flames. The elegant towers that had stood for millennia were crumbling under the relentless assault of the Dominion swarm. "Status report," Zara commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos of the command center. Her emerald scales caught the emergency lighting as she turned from the viewport, revealing the distinctive ridged features of her people. The Catherians were an ancient race, masters of crystal technology and peaceful exploration, but they had never been warriors. "Sector 7 has fallen," reported Tactical Officer Renth, his usually calm demeanor cracking. "The swarm has breached our outer defenses. At current rate of advance, they will reach the capital within 6 hours." The young Catherian's hands trembled as he manipulated the holographic tactical display, red enemy markers overwhelming their dwindling blue defensive positions. Zara's throat sacs pulsed with barely contained emotion. The Dominion swarm had appeared 3 months ago from the galactic void, their black vessels moving like a plague across star systems. Unlike other conquerors who sought resources or territory, the swarm consumed everything in their path, converting entire populations into their collective consciousness. They left nothing behind but empty worlds and silence. "Evacuation progress?" Zara asked, though she already feared the answer. 17% of the population has reached the deep shelters," replied Communications Officer Lyra. "But the swarm has deployed some kind of interference field. Our long-range transmissions cannot penetrate beyond the system boundary. We cannot call for help from the other worlds." The bitter irony was not lost on Zara. The Catherian Confederation had spent centuries building alliances with peaceful species across their sector, but none possessed the military strength to challenge the swarm. Their philosophy of harmony and cooperation had created beautiful civilizations but woefully inadequate defenses. "Commander," a new voice interrupted from the chamber's entrance. Elder Silas Core shuffled forward, his ancient frame supported by a walking crystal that pulsed with soft light. The eldest member of the High Council rarely left his meditation chambers, and his presence here meant desperation had reached even the most sheltered leadership. "Elder Core," Zara acknowledged with a respectful bow, "I regret that you must witness this darkness." "The darkness was always coming," Silas said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "Our ancestors knew this day would arrive. That is why they preserved the beacon." He gestured toward a younger Catherian who had entered behind him. "Scholar Nexus Vale has made a remarkable discovery in the deep archives." Nexus Vale stepped forward, clutching a crystal data tablet that shimmered with ancient markings. The scholar's scales were pale with excitement and fear. "Commander, we have found records of the stellar beacon, an artifact left by the Watchers before they vanished from our history. The writings suggest it was designed for exactly this situation." "The Watchers," Zara repeated. Every Catherian child learned of the mysterious beings who had visited their world 10,000 years ago, sharing knowledge and technology before disappearing without explanation. Most considered them legend, but the crystal ruins, scattered across Ethros, proved they had been real. "The beacon was hidden beneath the capital's foundation," Nexus continued. "According to the archives, it can send a signal across any distance, calling for those who would answer when all hope is lost. The Watchers called them the Guardians." "Guardians," Lyra whispered from her station. "But who would answer? Every civilization in our sector lacks the power to stand against the swarm." Elder Silas stepped closer to the tactical display, studying the red markers that represented certain doom. "Perhaps the signal reaches beyond our sector. Perhaps the Guardians come from realms we have never explored." He turned to Zara, his ancient eyes holding desperate hope. "It is our only chance, Commander. Will you activate the beacon?" Zara looked around the command center at her officers, all young Catherians who had never known war until 3 months ago. They had fought bravely with inadequate weapons against impossible odds, but valor alone could not stop the swarm. She thought of the billions of her people in the shelters below, trusting their leaders to find salvation. "Show me the beacon," she said. The journey to the ancient chamber beneath the Capitol took them through corridors carved from living crystal, their walls humming with residual energy from Watcher technology. The deeper they went, the more alien the architecture became, until they stood before a massive door covered in symbols that seemed to shift when viewed directly. The door responds only to those who approach with pure intent, Nexus explained, placing his hand on the crystal surface. The symbols flared with blue light, and the door dissolved like water, revealing a chamber that took Zara's breath away. The stellar beacon rose from the center of the circular room, a pillar of crystalline metal that reached toward the distant ceiling. Its surface was covered in more of the shifting symbols, and it hummed with power that made the air itself vibrate. But what truly amazed Zara were the walls, which showed not stone or crystal, but the depths of space itself, stars wheeling in ancient patterns. "How is this possible?" she whispered. "Watcher technology transcends our understanding," Elder Silas replied. "They could manipulate space and time as easily as we shape crystal. This chamber exists partially outside normal reality, allowing the beacon to reach across any distance instantly." Nexus approached a control interface that had materialized beside the beacon. The activation sequence requires a command authorization from the highest military authority. "Commander, you must place your hand here and speak your intent clearly." Zara approached the beacon, feeling its power wash over her like a tide. Above them, through the chamber's crystal ceiling, she could see the orange glow of the burning city. Time was running out for her people, for her world, for everything she had sworn to protect. "I am Commander Zara Thane of the Catherian Defense Force," she said, placing her scaled hand on the interface. "I call upon the Guardians across the void. Our people face extinction. If there are those who would answer, we beg for your aid." The beacon responded instantly. Light exploded upward, from its core, passing through stone and metal as if they were air. From orbit, the light was visible as a brilliant blue column shooting from Ethros into the depths of space, carrying with it a message of desperate hope. 12 light-years away, Captain Marcus Reed was reviewing supply manifests aboard the UES Prometheus when his communications officer's voice cut through the bridge's routine activity. "Captain, I'm receiving an unknown signal on all frequencies," Lieutenant Sarah Kim reported, her fingers dancing across her console. "It's not using any standard protocol, but somehow our systems are translating it automatically." Marcus set down his tablet and moved to the communication station. A veteran of humanity's expansion into deep space, he had encountered many strange phenomena in his 15 years of service, but nothing quite like this. The Prometheus was humanity's most advanced exploration vessel, designed to push the boundaries of known space and establish first contact protocols with alien civilizations. "Play the message," he ordered. The bridge fell silent as an alien voice filled the air, speaking in a language none of them recognized, yet somehow every word was perfectly understood. The desperation in the speaker's tone transcended species, barriers. "I am Commander Zara Thane of the Catherian Defense Force. I call upon the Guardians across the void. Our people face extinction. If there are those who would answer, we beg for your aid." The message repeated several times before fading into static. Marcus stared at the communication display, his mind racing. Humanity had been alone in their expansion through space, finding ruins and artifacts but no living civilizations. This was their first contact with another intelligent species, and it was a cry for help. "Analysis, Lieutenant Kim," Marcus said. "The signal originated from the Kepler 442 system, approximately 12 light-years from our current position," Kim reported. "The carrier wave is unlike anything in our databases, but it interfaced perfectly with our equipment. It's almost as if our systems were designed to receive it." "That's impossible," said Science Officer Dr. Elena Vasquez, looking up from her own analysis. "Unless—" She paused, her expression growing thoughtful. "Captain, I'm detecting quantum entanglement, signatures in the signal structure. This isn't just a radio transmission. Someone has created a direct information link across space-time." Marcus turned to his tactical officer, Lieutenant Jake Morrison. "What do we know about the Kepler 442 system?" "Long-range sensors detected," Unusual energy signatures from that direction 6 months ago, Morrison replied, calling up stellar charts on the main display. We classified it as natural phenomena, but looking at the data now with this new information, it could have been weapons fire on a massive scale. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. An entire civilization was under attack while humanity debated and analyzed. He thought of Earth's history, of all the times his species had wished for intervention from above when facing extinction-level events. The choice before him was clear. Helm, set course for Kepler 442, maximum velocity, he commanded. Communications, send a priority message to Earth Command. Inform them we have made first contact and are responding to a distress call. Sir, Morrison interjected, we don't know what we're flying into. An enemy capable of threatening an entire star system could destroy us easily. Marcus looked around his bridge at the men and women who had signed up to explore the unknown and make contact with alien life. They had trained for this moment their entire careers, but none had expected it to come as a desperate rescue mission. That's a risk we'll have to take, he said. We can't be the species that received a cry for help and chose to ignore it. If these Catherians are facing extinction, then humanity will do everything in our power to prevent it. As the Prometheus and its escort vessels altered course toward the unknown, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this moment would define not just first contact, but humanity's place in the galaxy. They were no longer alone, and with that knowledge came responsibility. The journey to Kepler 442 would take 6 days at maximum velocity, 6 days during which an entire civilization might be wiped from existence. Marcus could only hope they would arrive in time to make a difference. On Ethros, the stellar beacon continued to pulse with otherworldly light, its signal racing across the void toward distant guardians who had yet to learn they were needed. The Dominion swarm pressed their advance, unaware that their victims had just called upon protectors who would prove far more dangerous than any prey they had ever encountered. The echo from the void had been sent, and soon it would be answered. When Guardians answer, the Prometheus dropped out of warp at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, and Captain Marcus Reed immediately knew they had arrived in the middle of a war zone. The tactical display painted a grim picture. Hundreds of alien vessels locked in combat around the third planet, while debris fields marked the graves of countless ships. My God, whispered Dr. Elena Vasquez from the science station. The energy readings are off the scale. How long has this battle been going on? Analyzing weapon signatures, reported Lieutenant Morrison from Tactical. I'm seeing 2 distinct technologies. The defending ships use some kind of crystalline energy projection, while the attackers... He paused, frowning. The attackers aren't using conventional weapons at all. They're deploying some form of biomechanical integration beam. Marcus studied the main screen, watching as sleek ships with organic curves fought desperately against darker vessels that seemed to pulse with malevolent life. Communications, can you establish contact with the defenders? Working on it, sir, Lieutenant Kim replied, her fingers flying over her console. The same quantum entanglement effect that let us receive their original message should allow for real-time communication. Got it. She looked up excitedly. I'm connecting you with the Catherian command ship. The main screen flickered and resolved into the image of an alien being unlike anything humanity had ever imagined. Commander Zara Thane's emerald scales caught the emergency lighting of her damaged bridge, and her large, intelligent eyes widened with surprise as she took in the sight of the human captain. Unknown vessel, she said, her words translated instantly by the mysterious quantum link. Identify yourself. Are you responding to our beacon? This is Captain Marcus Reed of the United Earth ship Prometheus, Marcus replied, standing straighter. We received your distress call and have come to render assistance. What is your tactical situation? Zara's throat sacs pulsed with what Marcus would later learn was relief mixed with amazement. Captain Reed, I am Commander Zara Thane. Your timing is miraculous. The Dominion swarm has us outnumbered 10-1. Our defenses are failing, and we estimate 6 hours before planetary bombardment begins. Behind Zara, Marcus could see other Catherians working frantically at crystalline control interfaces. Damage reports flickered across their displays in symbols. that somehow translated themselves in his mind. The situation was desperate. "Commander Thane, we're scanning your enemy now," Marcus said. "Can you tell us about their capabilities and intentions?" "The swarm does not seek conquest in any traditional sense," Zara explained, her voice tight with controlled fear. "They consume entire populations, integrating them into their collective consciousness. Every world they take makes them stronger. They have already absorbed 12 civilizations in our sector." Dr. Vasquez leaned forward from her station. "Captain, I'm detecting something unusual about the swarm ships. They're not just organic technology. They're partially composed of the neural patterns of assimilated species. Each vessel contains the consciousness of thousands of beings." The horrific implication struck everyone on the bridge simultaneously. The enemy wasn't just using biological technology. They were using the enslaved minds of their victims as living components. "That ends now," Marcus said, his voice carrying the steel that had seen humanity through countless crises. "Morrison, analysis of enemy vessels? They're powerful, but they rely heavily on overwhelming numbers and psychological warfare," the tactical officer reported. "Their hulls show weaknesses to concentrated energy strikes, and their formation patterns suggest a hive mind coordination that might be vulnerable to disruption." Marcus activated the fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Prometheus. Actual. We have encountered a hostile force engaged in genocide against a peaceful species. Rules of engagement are weapons-free. Show these invaders what happens when they threaten innocent life." The human task force consisted of 5 ships: the exploration vessel Prometheus, 2 frigates, a destroyer, and the heavy cruiser Defiant. Against hundreds of swarm vessels, they were vastly outnumbered, but Marcus had fought against bad odds before. "Commence attack," he ordered. What followed would be remembered in Cytherian history as the day the stars caught fire. The human ships moved with tactical precision that stunned both friend and foe, their weapons designed for exploration suddenly revealing their true nature as instruments of protection. The Prometheus led the charge, its particle beams cutting through swarm vessels like light through darkness. But it was the human tactical doctrine that truly turned the tide. Where the Cytherians fought defensively, trying to preserve their beautiful ships and minimize casualties, the humans fought with the calculated aggression of a species that had survived ice ages, world wars, and the hostile emptiness of space. "Target the larger vessels first," Marcus commanded. "Break their command structure and the smaller ones will lose coordination." Lieutenant Morrison unleashed a barrage of quantum torpedoes that tore through a swarm command ship, causing 3 nearby vessels to drift aimlessly as their controlling consciousness was severed. The human frigates Eagle and Falcon worked in perfect coordination, their overlapping fields of fire creating killing zones that the organic enemy ships couldn't navigate. On the Cytherian command ship, Scholar Nexus Vale watched the battle with wonder. "Commander Thane, observe their tactics. They fight not as individuals but as parts of a greater whole, yet each ship maintains independent thought. It's like watching a dance of controlled violence." Zara nodded, marveling at how the human ships moved. "Signal all Cytherian vessels. Form up with the human ships. If we're going to survive this, we need to fight as they fight." The combined fleet began to push back the swarm, but victory came at a cost. The destroyer Yorktown took heavy damage protecting a group of Cytherian evacuation ships, and the Defiant's shields were failing under concentrated fire from a cluster of biomechanical attackers. It was then that Dr. Vasquez made a crucial discovery. "Captain, I'm detecting a central coordination node among the swarm fleet. If we can disrupt it, their entire attack formation should collapse." "Where?" Marcus demanded, watching as another Cytherian ship exploded on the tactical display. The large vessel at the center of their formation. It's not just commanding the others. It's literally thinking for them. The smaller ships are extensions of its consciousness. Marcus saw the opportunity immediately. "All ships concentrate fire on the central command vessel. Morrison, prepare our full payload of quantum torpedoes." The coordinated assault by both human and Cytherian forces focused on the massive swarm vessel at the heart of their formation. As weapons fire converged on the target, something unexpected happened. The ship began to speak. A voice filled the communication channels, not translated by technology but somehow understood directly by every conscious mind in the system. It was the voice of the convergence, the hive mind entity that controlled the Dominion swarm. "Guardians," it said, the word carrying surprise and ancient recognition. "You have returned. The cycle begins anew." Marcus exchanged glances with Dr. Vasquez. "What cycle? What are you talking about?" "Long ago, your species seeded this galaxy with beacons, calling themselves protectors of the weak. We consumed them, as we consume all things. Yet here you stand again, unchanged, unlearned." The voice carried malevolent amusement. "Do you truly believe you can stop the hunger that devours stars?" "We don't believe," Marcus replied coldly. "We know, because we're not the same species that came before. We're their heirs, and we've learned from their mistakes." The final assault on the convergence vessel lasted only minutes, but those minutes rewrote the history of both species. As quantum torpedoes and crystal beams converged on the hive mind's core, the massive ship's organic hull began to convulse and tear. The consciousness that had directed thousands of vessels across multiple star systems suddenly found itself facing something it had never encountered: coordinated resistance from beings who refused to submit. When the command ship exploded, in a cascade of biomechanical fragments, the effect on the rest of the swarm fleet was immediate and total. Smaller vessels began drifting without purpose, their controlling intelligence severed. Some attempted to flee toward the outer system, but the combined human-Catherian task force was ready for them. "Pursuit course," Marcus ordered. "Don't let any escape to report back to their main force." The battle continued for another 2 hours as the Allied fleet hunted down the remaining swarm vessels, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. When the last enemy ship was destroyed, and strange silence fell over the Kepler 442 system. On the surface of Ethros, billions of Catherians emerged from their shelters to see their skies clear of enemy fire for the first time in months. In the Eye, ancient chamber beneath the capital, the stellar beacon continued to pulse with otherworldly light, its purpose fulfilled. "Commander Thane," Marcus said over the communication link, "it appears your people are safe. The immediate threat has been eliminated." Zara's image on the screen showed exhaustion mixed with gratitude. "Captain Reed, your species has saved not just the Catherians but potentially every free civilization in this sector. How can we ever repay such a debt?" "By helping us understand," Marcus replied. The swarm entity mentioned that humans had been here before, that we had seeded beacons throughout the galaxy. We need to know what that means. Hours later, in the crystal archives beneath Ethros, Dr. Vasquez worked alongside Scholar Nexus Vale to unlock the deepest Watcher records. What they discovered would reshape humanity's understanding of their place in the universe. "The quantum signatures are identical," Vasquez reported to Marcus over the communication link. "The Watchers who visited this world 10,000 years ago were human, but not from Earth. They were from a future iteration of humanity that had achieved faster-than-light travel through means we don't yet understand." "Time travel?" Marcus asked. "More complex than that," Nexus interjected, his excitement evident despite his exhaustion. "The records suggest they were humans from a timeline where your species developed differently, achieving technological transcendence. They came back to plant the beacons as insurance, knowing that linear time would eventually produce a version of humanity capable of answering the call." Elder Silas Core, who had been listening to the discussion, stepped forward. "The Watchers told our ancestors that guardians would come when darkness threatened the innocent. They were speaking of you, Captain Reed. Your humanity, from your timeline, shaped by your specific struggles and triumphs." Marcus felt the weight of cosmic destiny settling on his shoulders. "So we're not just explorers anymore. We're protectors." "You always were," Zara said softly. "You just needed to learn it." In the days that followed, as human and Catherian engineers worked together to repair the damage from the battle, a new alliance began to form. The Catherian Confederation formally requested that humanity establish a permanent presence in their sector, serving as protectors against future threats like the Dominion swarm. The agreement signed between Captain Reed, representing Earth Command, And the Catherian High Council became the foundation of what would later be known as the Galactic Protectorate. Humans would serve as guardians, their warrior nature and technological adaptability making them ideal defenders, while the Catherians and other peaceful species would provide scientific knowledge and cultural wisdom. The beacons throughout this sector will be reactivated, announced Admiral Sarah Chen, who had arrived with a full Earth fleet to establish the new Protectorate headquarters. Any species facing extinction-level threats will be able to call for help, and humanity will answer. As the Prometheus prepared to continue its exploration mission, now with a Catherian cultural exchange officer aboard, Marcus reflected on how drastically their situation had changed. They had departed Earth as explorers, seeking to understand their place in an empty universe. They were returning as acknowledged guardians of a galactic community they were only beginning to understand. The echo from the void had been answered, but it was only the beginning. Across the galaxy, other beacons waited to be activated. Other civilizations struggled against darkness, and other calls for help would soon reach the protectors who had learned their true purpose among the stars. Humanity had found its destiny, not as conquerors or explorers, but as the guardians their ancient selves had always intended them to be. The cycle was complete, and the galaxy was no longer alone in its fight against the darkness between the stars.